The movie begins with a woman named Annie Hardy, who is a musician and online figure, known for her right-wing views. It is nighttime, and she is driving her car down a road while broadcasting live from her account. She moves a few blocks down and parks her car, waiting for a man to pass by on his bicycle. She talks about this man who rides through this neighborhood daily at around this time. Moments later, a middle-aged creepy man passes by. Annie broadcasts this to her viewers and talks about the ongoing COVID-19 restrictions that have made people this way. Afterwards, she resumes her show called The Band Car, which is music-inspired, based on the comments of her viewers. She begins singing and rapping about the lockdown and how it makes her feel frustrated. The next day, we see Annie packing her luggage. It seems that the loneliness of quarantine has made her decide to fly out to London. The broadcast shows Annie's house, which she calls a shithole. The way the stuff is lying everywhere, it literally seems like one. Her little cute cat comes on screen, and she shares the story of how her cat named Gustine peed on her discarded pants after she told her about her move. Guess the cat didn't like her going away. The poor pet must have been angry. Her stuff all packed, she locks the house and is on her way. She broadcasts her journey through the road, to the almost empty airport, and all the way to arriving in England. Once there, she arrives at her friend and former bandmate Stretch's house, who now makes ends meet as a food delivery driver and resides with his girlfriend. The keys to the house seem to be lying under a tile nearby. It is night, and the neighborhood is asleep. Annie takes the keys out and invites herself in. As she enters, she sees the house bathed in darkness. Putting her bags near the door, she goes in. Inside, there is a creepy crab frame. She broadcasts it live, telling her followers how it is the commemoration photo of Stretch getting crabs for the first time. She walks further in, towards Stretch's room. Once there, she sees him asleep. To entertain her followers, she decides to prank him. This crazy woman shocks the poor man awake by slapping him. It seems that Stretch was sleeping with his girlfriend Gemma. Hearing her boyfriend screaming in terror, poor Gemma also startles awake. But they soon calm down after noticing that it is none other than Annie. What a dreadful surprise. The next morning, Annie awakens and starts her live streaming. She enters the kitchen, prompted by an empty stomach. But soon disappointment mars her face when she sees only healthy food on every shelf. She would have liked a cheeseburger. Soon after, Gemma also wakes up and comes to the kitchen. She asks Annie if she would like some coffee, and the woman thanks her after saying yes. Gemma gives her a sanitizer, but she just rubs it on her shirt instead of applying it correctly. Tensions quickly arise between Annie and Gemma due to their differing opinions on COVID-19 and politics. Their conflicting views become apparent during their interactions. Annie then tells Gemma about how one of her followers thinks that she is hot. The woman thanks her, but when Annie tries to get a bit closer, Gemma asks her to maintain social distance. Although Annie keeps her distance, she starts singing with a mic about how the mainstream media is just misleading them into thinking that this is a contagious virus. The room turns a bit awkward with the two, but thankfully Stretch enters, breaking the tension. He warmly welcomes Annie. They hug, and he grabs her mic to sing, but Gemma soon takes it from him and sanitizes the object before putting it on the counter. She takes Stretch aside, and they whisper about something. The people on the broadcast speculate that Gemma is feeling somewhat jealous. As they prepare breakfast, Gemma is the only one who is careful about the COVID guidelines, sanitizing properly, and wearing a mask. Stretch shows Annie the band t-shirt he is wearing, and Gemma asks her to share stories about their gig days. This evil woman agrees and tells her the secret about why they nicknamed her boyfriend Stretch. Ignoring the poor man's odd expression, she shares the uncomfortable story of how he would select groupies from among the crowd after their late-night concert and do inappropriate things with them. As Annie finishes up the story, Stretch turns to his girlfriend and keeps emphasizing on how he is called Stretch because he is tall. Later that day, Annie accompanies Stretch on his delivery rounds. They do the usual car concert and arrive at a restaurant to pick orders. As Stretch makes the deliveries, people get uncomfortable with Annie as she is not wearing a mask and is even refraining from keeping a social distance. Despite Stretch's efforts to maintain harmony, Annie's staunch anti-mask stance causes friction with the people around. Her perspectives lead to frustration for Stretch and cause disagreements with restaurant owners, stirring up tension during their encounters. At one particular restaurant, she argues with the poor man who asks her to put on a mask. With a straight face, she tells him how she is wearing a new fiber technology mask. He just can't see it. The man laughs, but soon turns serious. When the woman blatantly argues back, chaos ensues. Annie causes mayhem, touching all over the place, and even coughing at one point to mock the people. This woman is a disaster. It is one thing to not believe the media, But to disrespect others' views and put poor Stretch's livelihood at risk like this is pure evil. Upon her return, an enraged Gemma confronts Annie, unleashing her fury. She throws stuff at her, and the fight escalates physically, but Stretch quickly separates the two. The couple goes inside, arguing while Annie the home wrecker stays outside. She then overhears Gemma pressuring Stretch to expel Annie from the house. Fueled by anger, Annie gets out of the house and takes off with Stretch's car and phone. The live stream gig resumes as she starts to drive. All of a sudden, she gets a call on Stretch's phone. It seems to be from Gemma. She attends it, and Stretch starts shouting from the other end. He tells her to bring back the car. In the background, Gemma screams about throwing away all of Annie's stuff and calling the police on her. However, this woman has not a single care in the world. She cuts the call. A notification pops up. It seems to be a delivery order on Stretch's phone. After thinking for a bit, she decides to take this order, intending to indulge in the meal herself. In the meantime, poor Stretch also joins her live stream and comments for her to please come back and stop this nonsense. His pleas fall on deaf ears though. Poor man must be regretting ever befriending this woman. The woman soon arrives at the designated restaurant. As she enters, Annie is taken aback to find it eerily deserted. She moves around and sees a jar of eggs. She tells her followers that if someone pays her, she would eat one of these boiled eggs. Soon enough, a payment notification pops up, and she bites into one of the eggs. Her face turns all disgusted as she declares that it was horrible. Before she can gobble it up, the owner arrives. It is a blonde woman who quickly ushers her out after saying that they have been pretty busy, so the order must have been cancelled. As Annie is walking back to the car, surprisingly, the owner calls out to her. Her surprise is amplified when the owner offers her a significant sum to transport a fragile elderly woman named Angela to a specific location. The woman tells Annie, who is literally broadcasting it to the world, that it must stay as a secret between the two. Annie of course agrees. They reach a hidden corner of the cafe. After seeing the poor old woman wearing a mask, Annie becomes hesitant. She quickly turns around and rushes out, saying that she can't do it. The owner follows her and pleads with her, but it doesn't work. Annie doesn't want to get involved with what looks like human trials. The owner then takes out an envelope and gives her a thick wad of money. Afterwards, we see Annie supporting the old black woman towards the car and telling her followers how she is a really good person. She embarks on the journey of taking the woman to 214 Timberline Way, broadcasting the entire experience to her online followers. Before Annie can start the car, Gemma calls her again, but this time she doesn't answer. During the trip, Angela faces an unfortunate incident, resulting in a need to halt their journey at a nearby diner. It's during this stop that Annie, while assisting Angela in the washroom, stumbles upon an intriguing sight. There is an Ariana Grande tattoo adorning the older woman's stomach. However, as she is cleaning up the old lady, a strange woman barges into the diner in search of Angela. She comes toward the restroom door and initiates a sudden and violent attack on the door. Annie screams and turns towards Angela, whose eyes have turned gray. The lights above them suddenly burst and Annie rushes out in fear. In self-defense, Annie manages to fend off the assailant. Annie hides in a corner, and to her astonishment, she sees Angela standing before the TV and the woman asking her to come along with her. As Annie turns around, the other woman is hurled at the door just near her. This prompts her to quickly get up and flee the place. Her escape is soon thwarted when the other woman comes after her and launches attacks on her. In an act of self-defense, she grabs a soda can and smashes her head in. The attacker falls unconscious, and she flees the place. Annie hastily retreats to the safety of the car, bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. In the meantime, Stretch, driven by the live stream, manages to track down Annie. He approaches a bewildered Annie inside his car, who asks how he found her. The woman, who has been going live throughout, asks this very intelligent question. He shows her the live stream and then asks about the other person inside the car. A terrified Annie looks back to find Angela, who has suddenly materialized inside the vehicle. Annie drops her phone and panics. After calming down a little, she tells Stretch to quickly start the car and take off. Despite all the craziness that she experienced with Angela, Annie still decides to take the woman along. Tension escalates further as they drive on, resulting in a heated argument between Stretch and Annie. Stretch is asking Annie all kinds of questions, but honestly, she herself doesn't know much. She tells him how some people are after Angela, thus they must take her away before they come and attack her again. The old woman keeps silent throughout and refuses to speak. It is unknown whether she can or cannot speak at this point. The argument between Stretch and Annie escalates, compelling them to pull over. As the two go to argue outside the car, After a few moments, she mysteriously disappears. Annie sees her flee and rushes after her, while Stretch comes back to the car. Worried, he takes the camera and rushes out. He sees Angela and ventures into the nearby forest in search of her. His pursuit leads him to discover Angela perched atop a tree. Scared out of his mind, he rushes back to the car. There, he reads all the negative comments on the live stream. They call him a loser, and how he is scared like a chicken. This makes him go back towards the tree and climb up to save the old woman. All the while, he never forgets to curse Annie who put him in this mess. He climbs up high, and in a moment of desperation to reach her, Stretch falls, and the live stream also cuts short due to connectivity issues. As the poor man lies there, Angela also comes back down to the ground, hauntingly floating effortlessly. Just as the woman disappears back into the forest, Stretch gets up. One of his shoes seems to be stuck in the tree. He groans as he looks at it. However, his distraction is short-lived as Annie rushes towards him, screaming. She tells him that the woman who previously attacked her has reappeared and is now wielding a shotgun and hell-bent on claiming their lives. They come across an abandoned vehicle in the middle of the forest and quickly get in to escape the crazy woman. They hide under the covers of a discarded blanket inside. The woman enters the vehicle and looks around with her flashlight. Before she can spot them, beastly howls and shrieks grab her attention, making her rush out. As they notice the woman going far away, they finally emerge from their hiding. Annie starts going live once more. As they rush towards safety, Stretch asks her about Angela, and a scared Annie snaps at him. She tells him that if he is so worried, he should just go looking for the woman. Angrily, she pushes him, and the man falls on his back. Regretting it, Annie quickly apologizes and bends down to see his injured foot. All of a sudden, the atmosphere turns eerie as they start hearing twigs snapping nearby. While they concentrate on the distant sounds, all of a sudden, Stretch's phone rings. He quickly goes to answer it. It turns out to be a livid Gemma. After cooling her down, he comes to give the phone to Annie so she can apologize. This crazy girl only makes Gemma's anger flare up with her half-hearted apology. Stretch quickly snatches the phone back, and they return to the car. As they settle down and the headlights light up, they are startled to see Angela standing in front of the car. After arguing back and forth, Annie decides to go and see the woman. Annie hesitantly approaches the old woman, grabs her, and rushes back to the safety of the car. Soon after, the woman is once more settled into the vehicle. Annie screams at Stretch, telling him that the woman is bleeding from her mouth. Shaking, she decides to remove the mask and makes a horrifying discovery. Poor Angela's mouth has been sealed shut with staples. The grotesque sight makes her cringe in fear. Crimson blood gushes out of the woman's mouth. All of a sudden, Angela, in a horrifying attempt to free herself, tears off the staples, causing more blood to gush out. Shockingly, Angela tries to bite Annie, creating a distraction that causes Stretch to lose focus. Chaos ensues as the three shout and scream. In a tragic turn of events, the commotion leads to a fatal collision with another car. The shrieks of the passengers finally quieten. When Annie and Stretch come to their senses, they see a man's hand dangling inside the other car from the windshield mirror. He moves at first, but soon a fatal blast occurs, resulting in the demise of the two newlyweds. Both Stretch and Angela seem to have already escaped the car, while Annie is locked in. She screams for help as the smoke from the fire makes her almost lose consciousness. Before she can pass out, she somehow manages to break out of the car. Outside, the chaos escalates as Angela launches a vicious attack on Annie and Stretch, showcasing inexplicable and terrifying supernatural abilities. Her eyes glaze over once more, but luckily Annie pushes her off and rushes back towards the scene of the accident. There she finds Stretch, all worn out and smoking cigarettes. They try to console each other. However, they are soon attacked by Angela, who bites into Annie. Stretch hits her in the head and takes Annie's hand to run away. In their frantic attempt to escape, Annie and Stretch try to signal a passing vehicle, but the dire situation takes a tragic turn as the car accidentally hits Stretch. Annie grabs the phone that is live streaming once more and rushes to hide from the onslaught of bullets. She hides inside a cave, but to no avail. The woman seizes Stretch, who is outside. She calls out to Annie, telling her to come out or else Stretch would be taken care of for good. After hearing a gunshot, a crying and trembling Annie rushes out. There she sees the woman wielding the shotgun, standing near the vehicle. Annie manages to sneak into the vehicle and rush past them, but the woman shoots at the car, making her stop. Meanwhile, the live stream gains widespread attention, drawing in a flood of viewers to the chat. Amidst the chaos, Annie finds herself at gunpoint. In a desperate struggle, aided by Stretch, she manages to trap the woman's arm in the steering wheel, ultimately fracturing it. The scene is fraught with tension, as the woman who was just attacking them is now distraught and desperate and discloses a startling revelation. She is none other than Angela's mother, who has been relentlessly tracking her daughter. Angela is, in fact, only 16 years old. Annie and Stretch are shocked and unwilling to accept this. They spent an entire night with the woman, and she was definitely old. Desperate, Angela's mother displays a recent photo showing a young Angela with an identical tattoo, pleading the two to understand. Annie starts laughing in disbelief. How could she be 16? However, before any resolution can be reached, Angela suddenly materializes. Her mother wrenches her broken arm away from the steering wheel and rushes off towards her daughter. In a shocking and gruesome turn of events, Angela violently tears her mother, sending shockwaves of horror through the already tense atmosphere. With relentless determination, Angela sets her sights on Annie and Stretch, continuing the pursuit in a chilling display of inhuman abilities. After witnessing the car fly up, the terrified duo runs for their lives. Annie runs off and vanishes before Stretch can catch up. In a desperate bid for safety, Stretch stumbles upon the eerie confines of an abandoned amusement park. He enters the eerie place and finds it trashed. After moving around, he sees blood on the floor and freaks out. Following the blood stains, he finally finds a tired and passed out Annie. Scared, he calls out to her, but to no avail. With no other choice, he slaps her hard and the woman startles awake. However, she is not pleased. They have an argument, and she snatches her phone away from him. As she turns the camera on him, we see Angela standing just behind them. Relentless in her pursuit, the terrifying woman has swiftly tracked them down. Scared, Annie runs with the phone and Stretch follows suit. They manage to hide inside a house of mirrors. After giving each other some strength, they get up to escape, but Angela creeps up on them once more, resulting in a fatal confrontation that leads to Stretch's demise. Annie, shrieking in fright, manages a narrow escape. Outside, she finds a car and breaks its door open. Quickly getting in, she rushes off. However, unbeknownst to her, she is being relentlessly pursued by the vengeful Angela. In a tense moment, Angela hits the car and it crashes to a stop. She infiltrates the car, intent on ending Annie's life. She attacks the woman, but Annie fights back. Before she can hurt her more, Annie turns the tables. She binds Angela with a seatbelt, trapping her in the backseat of the car. Then she covers her head with a plastic bag, but the maniac uses her supernatural abilities to levitate the car and throw it into the water. Poor Annie freaks out. Chaos ensues as the two strike and claw at each other inside the sinking car. After inflicting quite some damage on Angela, Annie narrowly evades her own demise and comes out of the water with her phone. Once outside, she collapses in exhaustion, crying on the shore. Unbeknownst to Annie, just behind her, Angela, possessing otherworldly abilities, levitates out of the water. Poor Annie can't catch a break. She is annoying, but not that much to deserve all this. The morning lights up her surroundings as Annie wanders around the forest in search of safety. After walking around, she finally stumbles upon a huge abandoned house. Seeking refuge, Annie unwittingly enters the remote house. Looking around, she finds it empty and takes a deep breath of relief. However, her relief is short-lived as she soon realizes that it's the very location she was instructed to take Angela to. Scared, she attempts to flee, but supernatural forces thwart her escape. Rushing, she enters a room and her heart sinks. Inside, she encounters cryptic occult symbols. Whimpering, she turns around, and in a chilling turn of events, Annie stumbles upon a group of eerie cult members. Screaming, Annie rushes out of the room. Desperately seeking refuge, Annie ventures into a strange tunnel-like place. With a thumping heart, she rushes through the place where she discovers Stretch's wrecked car among several other vehicles. As she prays for the keys in her heart, the creature catches up to her. Screaming, she kicks it and hides behind the vehicles. As the strange creature loses her for a bit, she rushes to the car and turns on the ignition, but it seems that the car has lost both its tires. Annoyed, she kicks the door shut, and a blaring alarm starts to sound. Terrified, she takes her bag and hides under the car. As the creature is about to pass her, she accidentally presses a key on the keyboard inside her bag, which starts playing. Hearing the noise, the evil entity follows it and finds her. Annie rushes out from under the car. Using her keyboard as a weapon, she valiantly defends herself, ultimately managing to defeat the monstrous creature and putting an end to the nightmarish ordeal. Exhausted and emotionally drained from the relentless and harrowing experiences of the night, Annie finds herself collapsing inside Stretch's car. Unexpectedly, the live stream restarts, drawing viewers back into the chat. In a spontaneous and raw moment, Annie begins to rap, pouring out her tumultuous experiences from the night, channeling her emotions and recounting the events she's just lived through. This woman has a super phone, even after all the live streaming and ordeal that it has been through. It is still working. The movie ends with Annie back in Los Angeles. She live streams again and does her usual banned car show.